deadly car crash. He thought he was lucky to survive. But the girl who didn't make it isn't done with him. She's following him, leaving messages, haunting his dreams. And she's closer than he thinks. Welcome back to Silent Scream, everyone. If you're new here, thank you for joining us. This is where we share terrifying stories that will crawl under your skin and linger long after the video ends. If you're already part of this channel, you know what's coming. Another nightmarish tale that you won't forget. Tonight's story is called She Wasn't Supposed to Survive the Crash. A man survives a deadly car crash, but survival doesn't mean safety. Because sometimes the dead don't rest quietly. They come back. They come back for you. So turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and let's get into the story. The first thing Ethan remembered was the sound of glass raining down, sharp and endless, like a storm inside his skull. When he opened his eyes, he wasn't on the road anymore. He was in a hospital bed, bright lights humming above him, the taste of iron thick in his mouth. They told him he was lucky. The car had rolled 3 times before slamming into the ditch. The other driver didn't make it. But they didn't mention her. That night, when Ethan finally closed his eyes, he saw her. A girl with blood in her hair, sitting in the passenger seat of his car as if she had always been there. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She only looked at him with hollow eyes that burned straight through him and whispered words he couldn't quite catch. He woke, gasping. His ceiling loomed above him, blank, except for the faint, jagged letters etched into the paint, letters that hadn't been there before. Why weren't you watching? Ethan stared at the words until his vision blurred. At first, he thought it was a hallucination, a trick of exhaustion, maybe even leftover painkillers clouding his brain. But when he rubbed his eyes, the writing didn't fade. It was there, carved into the plaster like fingernails had dug through the paint. Why weren't you watching? His chest tightened. He scrambled upright, half expecting to find someone in his apartment, but the room was still, silent, and empty. The curtains swayed slightly from the ceiling fan. His phone blinked with a new message on the nightstand. Normal. Everything normal. Except it wasn't. The words in the hospital echoed back. "You're lucky to be alive." That phrase felt like a curse now. Because when he closed his eyes, he saw her again. The blood. The empty stare. The other driver, they said, but that wasn't right. He hadn't seen anyone else in the other car. Just headlights, blinding and sudden, and the sharp buzz of his phone screen lighting up in his hand. 1 second. That was all it had taken. 1 second of distraction, thumb hovering over a text, eyes off the road, and then impact. The memory twisted in his stomach. He shoved himself out of bed, dragging a chair beneath the ceiling. His fingers brushed the letters. The grooves were real, rough, uneven, like someone had gouged them in while he slept. He climbed down fast, pulse thundering. Maybe he had done it himself in some half-conscious state. People talked about trauma making you do strange things, sleepwalking, scratching at walls, but that didn't explain the dreams. It didn't explain her. That night, he tried not to sleep. He made coffee, paced his living room, left the television on for noise. The world outside his apartment carried on like nothing had changed. A couple arguing across the hall, the faint hum of traffic, the city alive as always. But when his eyes finally slipped shut, he was back in the car. The glass exploded, metal bent like tinfoil. His ears rang with a shrill, endless scream, but it wasn't his. She was there again, next to him. Same blood, same hollow eyes, only this time her lips moved clearly. "You killed me." Ethan shot awake, sweat soaking through his shirt, throat raw as if he had been screaming. His ceiling bore fresh marks, darker and deeper than before. "You took everything from me." The coffee mug slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. The next few days blurred together in a haze of sleepless nights and restless mornings. Ethan called in sick to work, claiming headaches, nausea, anything to keep from driving again. His car sat in the apartment lot, mangled beyond repair, a reminder he couldn't escape. The girl followed him into every moment of silence. When he closed his eyes in the shower, her face appeared in the fogged glass. When he tried to eat, he saw her reflection in his spoon. When he walked past the mirror in the hallway for just a second, it wasn't his face staring back. It was hers, pale and accusing. He tucked into the crash report, desperate for details. Her name was Emily Hart, 19 years old, university student. She had been on her way home from her part-time job the night he swerved. The obituary photo showed her smiling, alive, the kind of face that belonged in sunlight, not smeared in blood. Ethan shut his laptop hard, stomach rolling. That night, the ceiling bled new words. "You stole my life. Give it back." He didn't remember screaming, but his throat ached in the morning, and his neighbors had slipped a concerned note under his door. Ethan tried to rationalize it. Survivor's guilt, maybe. He had read about it, hallucinations, nightmares, compulsions. Trauma carved strange paths through the brain. Maybe that was all this was, his mind punishing him for what he had done. But the grooves in the plaster were real, and they were getting deeper.
One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky bruised red, Ethan left his apartment and drove, not his car, but a borrowed one, anything to move, to breathe somewhere else. He drove to the crash site. The ditch was still there, marked by bent guardrails and a small cluster of flowers wilting against the dirt. A photo of Emily leaned against the post, her smile now a ghost, haunting the roadside. Someone had scrawled, "We miss you," in permanent marker on the metal. Ethan's chest cracked open. He dropped to his knees in front of the memorial, fingers clutching at the earth as if it could swallow him whole. "I'm sorry," he whispered, again and again, until the words dissolved into sobs. But when he lifted his head, he wasn't alone. She was standing across the road, her hair matted, her eyes fixed on him, and she was smiling. Ethan blinked, and she was gone. The roadside stretched empty, the flowers rustling under the faint push of wind. He stumbled back to the car, heart hammering so violently he thought it might crack his ribs. Maybe he had imagined her, his mind conjuring images to punish him further. That had to be it. But when he slid into the driver's seat, the rearview mirror tilted down by itself. He didn't touch it.
The angle shifted slowly, deliberately, until it no longer reflected his own face, only the blood-smeared girl sitting in the back seat, grinning. Ethan spun around. The back seat was empty. He slammed the car door and drove away, tires squealing against the asphalt, his breath ragged. That night, sleep pulled him down like a riptide. He fought it, drank black coffee, sat under the buzzing light of his kitchen, but exhaustion won. He was back in the car again, the crash replayed in stuttering flashes, the headlights, the shattering glass, the scream. Only now, he wasn't watching, he was in it, the metal crushing his legs, smoke filling his lungs. Emily was beside him, turned toward him with wide, unblinking eyes. "You didn't even break," she whispered. The world exploded in sound, a shriek of tearing steel. Ethan bolted upright in bed. For a split second, the ceiling was blank. Then, right before his eyes, letters scraped themselves into the plaster, each line groaning like nails on a chalkboard. "I am not done with you." The sound was real. He clutched his ears as the scratching filled the room, louder and louder, until dust rained down from above. He screamed and stumbled out into the hallway. His neighbors pounded on their wall, muffled voices calling, "Keep it down." He pressed his palms against his skull, shaking. How could they not hear it? The noise was deafening, unbearable, until suddenly it stopped. The apartment was silent, too silent. He refused to go back into the bedroom. He curled up on the couch, light from the TV flickering across the room. Every shadow seemed to twitch. At one point, the screen cut to static without warning. The sound hissed through the apartment. He grabbed the remote, hitting buttons desperately. The static didn't change. A voice broke through the crackle. "You should be dead." Ethan's breath caught. The static shifted, forming the faint outline of a face, her face, grinning through the snow. The TV screen cracked. A spiderweb of fractures spread from the center, shards dropping onto the carpet. He stumbled back, heart slamming into his throat. By morning, he felt hollow. He tried to eat, but every bite turned to ash in his mouth. He tried to shower, but the steam on the mirror fogged into words. "You can't escape." He swiped at the glass, but the letters bled back darker, thicker. His reflection shifted, the girl's dead eyes staring through his own. Ethan staggered out of the bathroom, nearly slipping on the tile. He had to know if he was losing his mind. He had to prove it. He dug deeper into Emily's life. Her obituary led him to her old social media, pages filled with snapshots of a girl who should still be alive, selfies in dorm rooms, photos of coffee cups and textbooks, blurry nights out with friends. Then he found a post from the day she died, a story uploaded just hours before the crash, a mirror selfie, smiling. Caption, "Closing shift done, finally going home." The timestamp was minutes before his phone buzzed. The weight of guilt nearly drove him to the floor. He closed his laptop, trembling. That's when the knock came. 3 slow, deliberate thuds at his door. Ethan froze. His neighbors never knocked like that. He crept closer, pressing his eye to the pee-hole. No one was there. He stepped back, then the knock thundered again, so hard the frame rattled. Ethan stumbled, adrenaline searing through him. He flung the door open. Empty hallway. He exhaled shakily, hand gripping the knob, but when he turned back, his stomach dropped. Every wall of his apartment was covered in writing, scrawled in jagged strokes, overlapping, endless, the same words again and again, carved deep into plaster wood, even the floorboards. "Watch me die, watch me die, watch me die." He staggered backward, hands trembling. And then the bedroom door slammed shut on its own. The sound cracked through the silence like a gunshot. Ethan's heart nearly stopped. Slowly, against every screaming instinct in his body, he stepped forward. The knob turned itself, squealing metal, and the door creaked open. The room beyond was dark, too dark. He reached for the light switch. Nothing. Then,
from the shadows above, a whisper, "I'm here." Something pale dropped from the ceiling, landing inches in front of him. Ethan screamed.
Ethan stumbled back from the pale figure that dropped before him, his throat raw from screaming. The thing on the floor rose slowly, impossibly, her movements jerky like broken bones snapping into place. Emily's head tilted, her wet hair plastered across her face, blood dripping onto the carpet. "You never looked up," she hissed. Her voice was wrong. Two voices layered together, one human, one shrill and piercing like tearing metal. Ethan bolted, sprinting toward the door. He didn't care where he went, only that it was away from her. But the knob twisted uselessly in his grip, the lock jammed as if welded shut. Behind him, he heard the shuffle of bare feet across the floor, closer, closer. He spun, back pressed to the door. The walls stretched impossibly long, like the walls were bending, warping. Every surface pulsed with writing, the grooves bleeding fresh red. The words swarmed together into a single sentence that screamed at him. "You should have died!" Emily lunged. Ethan grabbed the nearest thing, a lamp, and swung. The impact shattered porcelain, but she didn't stop. Her face came within inches of his, and for the first time he smelled her. Gasoline, copper, and burning plastic. The stench of the crash. He shut his eyes, bracing for impact. When he opened them, he wasn't in his apartment anymore. He was back in the car. The dashboard caved in around his legs, smoke filled his lungs. He coughed, choking, eyes stinging from the acrid air. The windshield was cracked in 1,000 spiderweb lines, headlights flickering weakly in the darkness beyond. And she was there, sitting beside him. This time, she wasn't bloody, she wasn't broken, she was whole, her chest rising and falling, her eyes glassy with fear. She turned to him like it was the first time. "Please, don't," she whispered. Ethan looked down. His phone was glowing in his hand, screen lit with the last message he tried to read. His thumb hovered, frozen over it. The realization hit him like another crash. He wasn't reliving the accident. He was inside the moment before it happened. He could stop it. If he dropped the phone, kept his eyes on the road, she would live. His hand shook violently. He tried to let go, but it felt glued to his palm. His breath quickened, heart pounding. Emily screamed, the headlights growing larger, brighter, consuming everything. And then, impact. He woke on the floor of his apartment, gasping, body slick with sweat. His phone buzzed beside him, screen cracked down the center. He pushed himself up on shaking arms, staring at the walls. The writing was gone. The ceiling was bare. For a brief, dizzy moment, he thought it was over. Then his gaze dropped. The carpet beneath him was soaked with water. No, thicker, darker. The smell of iron hit his nose. He scrambled back, hands slipping in the slick mass until he saw it clearly. Blood. It seeped from under the bedroom door in a steady stream, thick and endless, curling around his feet. Ethan's breath stuttered. The door creaked open. Emily stood in the doorway, her body mangled, her neck twisted, one arm hanging by threads. Yet she smiled, impossibly wide, teeth slick with black. "You had your chance. Now it's mine." The lights overhead burst, plunging the apartment into darkness.
The next morning, Ethan's apartment was silent. His neighbors noticed the smell first, a coppery stench seeping through the walls. By the time police forced the door open, They found the rooms pristine. No writing, no blood. Just an empty bed and a shattered phone lying on the floor. The only thing out of place was the ceiling. Above the bed, carved so deep into the plaster that dust coated the sheets below, were words that didn't belong to any living hand. I took him back. No one ever saw Ethan again. But some nights, when headlights flash past the apartment windows, neighbors swear they hear it. The squeal of tires, the crunch of steel, and a girl's voice whispering in the dark hallways. Why weren't you watching?
That was She Wasn't Supposed to Survive the Crash. What do you think? Was it guilt that drove him insane, or did Emily really take her revenge from beyond the grave? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss the next nightmare. And if you're already subscribed, thank you. You're a part of the reason these stories keep coming to life. Until next time, sleep well if you can.